forces, there's still a very large military. I mean, hundreds of thousands of troops deployed throughout the country, but principally in the Tamil majority regions in the north and the east. There's a very sophisticated, set a whole bunch of different intelligence agencies and police forces. I think they're well equipped, well trained, lots of connections with other, more powerful governments and their agencies. So there's no question about their technical capability. There has been a history, however, of intelligence operations and arrests being done for political purposes. So one of the key things is that doesn't happen here, in this case, and that that the charges follow the evidence, and hopefully that will be the case.
What is your thinking? Obviously, we don't want to enter into the realms of speculation when we don't have evidence or facts to hand, but given what we know about the nature of these attacks and your expertise, where would that be leading the security forces now, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think as the ambassador, High Commissioner was just saying, that these attacks are, extremely sophisticated. Just the level of coordination, the explosive power, the timing. So that suggests there's powerful forces involved, not just some small local groups from whatever community they're in. Whether that sophisticated sort of support base is within Sri Lanka or outside of Sri Lanka or some combination, I think that's the key issue. And whether it's whether the desire, the motivation is born of local conflict dynamics between the various communities, of which there are many, or whether it's more sort of global issues which are using Sri Lanka as sort of its playground. I think that's one of the other big questions. We just don't know now.
You've just returned from Sri Lanka as part of the work that you do, and you've been focusing on a report 10 years on since the end of the civil war. What were your findings in terms of how communities have come together and kind of smoothed over divisions, have they?
Well, I mean, I think certainly Sri Lanka has until this, one of the messages of our report was going to be there have not been any major sort of terrorist incidents, any terrorist incidents really at all in the last 10 years. What there has been are attacks on Christian communities by groups who claim to be defending Buddhism. There have been even more serious attacks on Muslim communities. Last year, almost a week of rioting that required a state of emergency to control it. Again, by groups who claim to be defending Buddhism against the threat of Islamic extremism. So we've seen those, and we've seen basically a failure of the government, I think, to grapple with the underlying dynamics within Sri Lanka. And which unfortunately have had the potential to provoke further rounds of violence. But again, I want to be cautious. We're not sure whether these attacks are actually sort of in some sense born of local dynamics or global dynamics, or some combination of the two.
International crisis group talking to the Lanka. In other news, Ukrainians aren't going to the polls in the country's general